Remarkable software companies aim to be different, not just better.
Welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast, where experts discuss international content management, product localization, and global expansion. I'm Caterina from Undertow. We create and manage localization programs for B2B SaaS companies so they can grow globally. Today, our founder Nicola Calabrese will be talking with Ton Dobbe, founder of Value Inspiration, author of The Remarkable Effect, and host of the Valuable Inspiration podcast. Ton has spent years helping B2B software companies stand out in crowded markets. And in this conversation, he shares how his Remarkable Effect framework can guide SaaS businesses through successful international expansion. Get ready for stories and power-packed tips on nailing your positioning, winning your biggest fans, and avoiding pitfalls when going global. And without wasting any time, let's begin.
Hi, Ton, and welcome to the Multilingual Content Podcast. How are you today?
I'm really good. 4 or 5 hours south of you, so in the Spanish Mediterranean area, great weather, and
That's
working on some cool projects.
That's good. That's really good to hear. So today we're going to talk about international expansion, sales, your Remarkable Effect framework in general, and how that applies to international expansion. But before we jump right into the topic, would you mind introducing yourself and tell us a bit about your journey?
Yeah, exactly. Well, my journey is a long one because I've been in the industry for quite some time. You can see my gray hair. Fun fact that not a lot of people know about me. I'm the son of a Dutch tulip farmer. So initially I was always going to be a tulip farmer, and I ended up in the software industry. So that came through my education. Back in the days, I was studying to become an entrepreneur. And in that whole journey, I ended up with 2 software companies that I did some work for. The competitive intelligence side, and on the other end, there was a strategic change. And that's how I ended up with Unit 4 back in the 90s. But Unit 4 is a company in the ERP space. And I've been there, I was employee number 174. And by the time I left, I was one of the 4,500 employees. The company had gone to the stock exchange, IPO'd, been delisted, be part of a private equity. And I really worked through all the changes of the company, both nationally in the Netherlands, then a little bit international through Belgium, and then through an acquisition we did back in 2000. We grew into 26 countries. So this whole topic of around internationalization and what to do and what not to do and what the challenges are is really common to me. So I actually was glad that you reached out to me to see whether I could add any value to the podcast. So back in 2017, I left Unit 4 after 26 years. The period before that, I've been in sales and marketing, then moved to product marketing. After the acquisition we did back in 2000, I became part of the international organization and headed up product strategy and product marketing internationally, globally. And the last 1.5 years, I was the chief evangelist within the company. And then I left in 2017 and started a business for myself to help companies that are in the B2B software space, become remarkable at what they do, because that's a word that is dear to my heart, which is at the end all about how do you stand out in a very crowded and busy marketplace. In the meantime, I wrote my book, The Remarkable Effect, hosted approximately 370 podcast episodes like yourself. So in constant contact with the market about what's going on and what's changing. And how do you stay on a level whereby you have something unique to offer? That's my day-to-day life. I help companies at the end reposition, because a lot of the problems that are in business software companies is around unclear positioning. And then I help to implement that positioning into the organization so you get momentum and actually start to get the growth from there.
That's a quite interesting journey indeed. Yeah, you have a lot of experience. One of the things that I want to start from is actually looking at the challenges that SaaS companies usually face when going international, especially when regarding localization, when they want to be relevant for a specific country they're entering.
Yeah. So what my experience is there, where do I start? Well, I think a lot of the misconception is that people think that internationalization is about the couple of things that you need to do on the product side. Because the first thing you think about, okay, we need to have an international version of the product. So it needs to speak English, in our case, when the product was actually Dutch. or French when we were moving to Belgium. And that is a big misconception, and actually a quite dangerous one, because language is possibly the simplest thing to do. But then you get to succeed, you have to really dig deep into what are all the local things that you have to embrace, not only in the product, but also in how to do marketing, how to do sales, how to do implementation, how to support. So it's a transformation that goes across the whole organization. So I think that is often thought of in a too light way. So on the product side, localization in itself, you can almost kind of divide into 10 particular areas. I mean, just thinking of regulatory support, statutory things you have to support, the different integrations you have to make that were normally working nicely in one country, but now don't work anymore because these organizations work with other banks, with other tax agencies, with other, name it, other products. If in the Netherlands, for example, or in the UK, you integrate with like a CRM and an ERP and a product management system. Well, in other countries, they have other heroes. All of these things change, and all of these things impact on the product side, of course, a lot. And of course, once you got that figured out, then you have to also make sure that it's understood and talked about in a different way or in the right way by everyone else in the company. So I think let me stop there. That is where the real challenges start. Often where companies fail to get momentum, get traction. I mean, just to go back and give you a little bit of an anecdote on the Unit 4 journey there. We were in the Netherlands and we had Belgium as a first step out into another country, which technically is not really that different. Localization-wise, a couple of things, but at the end they speak Dutch. That is a big help. Then we wanted to move to Germany with one of our products, and that appeared to be a completely different ballgame. Not only because the company was really known in its own country, in the Netherlands, and in Germany we were no one. So you start a greenfield, and the greenfield at the end is super, super hard to do and tough to do, because in things that work and used to work really well in one country don't have to be working well in that other country because people don't know you. There's just different perspective. So we saw a couple of our competitors struggle really, really hard with greenfields, and we extended what we were going to do there until we decided, okay, we need to do an acquisition in order to get into a country where there's already a product, an organization, and so on. And that's how we ended up with our international strategy. But there's different routes to go there, and it's a pretty tough choice to make the right one.
Yeah, and it really depends, I guess, on the company you're in, the kind of product or service that you're offering, the approach, if it's more like, let's say, a product-led or a sales-led approach, and the level of maturity also as well on the market you're entering. If your product category, for example, is very well known in your home market, but it's not well known in the market you're entering, there's a whole, let's say, different competitive scenario is quite different. I always say like your main competitor might be an Excel spreadsheet if you're selling software sometimes, because in that country, like this is not mature enough for that kind of software solution. Or maybe you're so innovative that they have nothing like that.
True.
But
there's all kind of nuances.
And so it's definitely not one, let's say, one size fits all approach is not really viable. But if we go to your remarkable effect framework, what you talk about as well in your book, like how can it be applied to company looking to, say, adapt their product or the market approach when going international?
Yeah. And like you said, I wrote this book in 2020. What fascinated me always is not how do you run a software company, because there's been 100,000 books written on that. But what do those companies that we start talking about, keep talking about, do different from the others? And I ended up with 10 traits. And if you look at it carefully, I mean, it applies to a company that is, and it's going to be really valuable for a company that's already in a particular place and getting some traction to accelerate that. But now that you have asked the question, it really applies as a very good framework to go by the moment you internationalize, particularly because the moment you go from one country to another, no one knows you. And that's where it's becoming even more important to get those traits right. And in my book, I'm talking about 3 levers. I want to particularly focus the framework for now on the first lever, because that is what I call the foundation. It's the value lever. And that is about 3 different traits. Remarkable software companies acknowledge they cannot please everyone. So it's about focus. And I'll jump in on that in a minute. The second one is remarkable software companies offer something valuable and desirable. And that and desirable is a really important thing there, because a lot of companies offer something that's valuable, but if it's not desirable, the traction really stays out. And then the last one is remarkable software companies aim to be different, not just better. So going out in one country to the next one and say, well, we're here, we offer something and it's better than that and that. For some, it's going to work. But at the end, people cannot judge on different. Is it better? Is it more user-friendly? I mean, is it faster compared to what? Is it higher quality compared to what? Different is something that people can understand and that you can also explain and demonstrate. And that's how, the moment you start clarifying that, it's not only going to help you in that new country, but also in your existing country. And that's where a lot of value can be created. So use that opportunity to go international as a moment to step back and say, okay, how clear is it really all? Because in that new country, if, for example, in the Netherlands or in the country where you are at, keep coming back to the Netherlands, where you are maybe the market leader. But now you're starting in a new country and you're no one. You have not even one country, not only one customer. So it's really valuable to get traction to say, okay, yes, in the country where we are at the moment, we serve a great portion of the market. We're the market leader, so we know our space. Just step back and say, okay, out of this group that we serve, which are the ones that have become our biggest fans? And the reason why they have become your biggest fans, do those rules also apply in that other country? Because that's where you're likely going to see your first traction going. And what you want in that first country is to get those first leads from the market and get an engine going whereby you have a high win rate. Because that's where momentum starts. That's where people start talking about you, and that becomes your engine then. So that first trait in my book, the value lever, acknowledge that you cannot please everyone, is a super important one in that new country. And if you kind of apply that in the right way, it's also easier to do trait number 2, which is offer something valuable and desirable. Yeah. And also then the third one, aim to be different and not just better. Because I see so many software companies out there that that's in that whole phrase, they have a lot of customers, thousands, whereby 60, 70%, yes, they can serve a problem. But if you ask those companies, why did you buy it? Why do you keep on it? They give a different answer than their biggest fans. Because these biggest fans, they saw something that you solve a particular problem in a different way than others are doing. And that's magic for them. So for them, you're going to be the one to go to. Whereby other companies, to go back to my example of Unit 4, we sold a finance system and a procurement system. Let's stick to finance. Everybody that needed accounts payable, accounts receivable, and a general ledger, we could technically serve. Where we were at our best was with companies in the service-centric industries. So that's one, like zoom in already. And within that group, it was companies that were that were changing very, very often, either through mergers and acquisitions, regulatory compliance, reorganizations, expanding, whatever the change scenario was. So when we were doing our repositioning project back in 2005, we asked a lot of our customers, okay, why do you love these products? A couple started laughing and said, we don't love your product. We actually hate it because it's so freaking flexible. Every time we have something we want to do, we have to make 15 choices. So yes, we helped them and we could do their general ledger thing. Where in the other group, it was like, we love it because it's a really flexible product and we can do anything with it. And that is our advantage. Well, pick those international and start applying your journey there. So, there was maybe a long answer to a question, but it really is important to start with, getting the foundation right. The moment you get your foundation right in a new country, everything becomes easier.
No, it was a really good question. I actually touched a bit on other couple of things that I wanted to ask you. So you mentioned the value, viability, and volume levers. So you talked about now about the value. So what about the viability and volume levers? How do you think they relate to international sales and marketing? Those are the two levels.
Well, the moment you got your value right, your value lever, that's your foundation. And once you got that right, the other levers will sort of get magnified by it, amplified by it. You already mentioned the second one, which is the viability lever. On that value that you are creating that's recognized in the market, you're going to get your first customers. And if you do it the right way, it's going to be high win rates, high deal values. People are prepared to pay a premium. they start talking about you because it was naturally built for them. Well, as you evolve in your own country, but also in that international domain, the next thing you have to do is make that business viable. And with that focus from the foundation, that is a much easier thing to do. The other 4 traits that follow, which are mastering the art of curiosity, turn customers actually into fans, which is another big thing, focusing on the essence. And the other one is also your innovation angle. It's not that you keep pushing out new features, it's actually creating new value possibilities, which in general doesn't really have to do with internationalization. On the other hand, it has a lot to do with it because your R&D engine now needs to decide, okay, what are we going to focus on? Whereby we are going to make sure that we stick and stay successful in 2 countries, in 3 countries, in 4 countries, not only in 1 anymore. So these things become harder and harder and harder. And I can tell you, when I started at Unit 4, we had 170 people. When I left, it was 4,500. So a radically larger organization. And we never had enough resources. So the moment you add 100 or you add 200 or 500 or 700, whatever, also in that internationalization angle, you could possibly also turn the R&D department, make it, move it to low-cost countries, and so on. Even then, you're always going to be, screaming for more resources. So it all comes down to having your foundation right, because that's where it becomes an optimal engine. And with that, you can build the right features and also keep focusing on what needs to be next, rather than, we never have time for where we need to be in 2-3 years' time. That's part of that part. And then the volume lever, which is more on the marketing and on the sales side. It starts with the value again. Because if the value is right, it becomes far easier to create momentum, even in that new country, getting again from 1 to 10 customers, from 10 to 100 customers, and so on. It becomes easier to surprise in that market because you got something that's different. And the value and the desirability of your product is at a higher level. It's easier to hit a nerve, which is extremely important these days because of all the noise. All of these things work together, but it starts with the foundation, the value lever.
Sorry to interrupt your listening, but do you want to grow your B2B SaaS in international markets? Because every country is different, and what users value in one market doesn't necessarily matter in another one. At Undertow, we help B2B SaaS companies like yours succeed in their international expansion. We create customized localization strategies that address the unique challenges of each market. In this way, you can effectively attract, engage, and convert customers worldwide. Visit undertowlanguages.com to find out more. And now back to the show. And when it comes to finding dream customers in new global markets, you mentioned already, is it what you mentioned about the finding fans that is different for a lot of other customers you already have? Is that the main focus, or is there any other advice around that?
Of course, it's always starting there. A lot of companies make the mistake, and I wrote a big essay on this topic. Because I see it all the time. When they do segmentation, they say, okay, we got it covered. We got it perfectly clear, because it's companies between 200 people and 2,000 people. It's companies in this region and that region and that region. It's companies in these particular sectors that sell this or buy this or manufacture that. That's all true. It's demographics, it's firmographics. You can search on it on LinkedIn and find thousands of companies that apply to that. Guess what? That's the total size of the market. But in that market, there's likely 80% that will never buy from you, because it's not about their size or their region or what they sell or what they buy. It's about how they are, what's going on internally. That has to do with what I call, it's typically in the psychographics arena. What companies aspire, what companies value, what they stand for, what risk they tolerate or not tolerate. And all of those type of things are much more in the heads of people, in terms of what these people are all about and how they are attracted to these businesses, how these organizations are actually organized. I had about at least 10 projects to reposition, whereby at the end turned out that these companies served organizations that had a bottom-up approach, were far better utilized and geared toward a solution than organizations that were top-down organized. At the end, you see the same building. It's the same. They have the same number of people working for them. They sell or deliver the same type of services. However, internally, they are radically different in terms of how they organize and how they apply their business. So learning that from your home market and having an eye for that is super important, and having that clear before you internationalize. Because internationally, it's going to likely have earliest customers are going to have the same type of characteristics.
And how do you find out these characteristics? Because as you said, like you cannot just put them in a LinkedIn filter. And how do you do, like, is it interview with current customers or?
Yeah, exactly. I've got different techniques for that. I've got it on my website. Just search for segmentation and you'll find that blog there. But in a nutshell, I compare it to a glass of water and your favorite cocktail. And at the end, substance is still the same. There's a liquid in there. Only the one is like, it's good for thirst, customers. The other one is like something that you want. Because there's all kind of ingredients that are in there that make the cocktail so special. How do you get to that? A lot of it is in interviewing customers. The people that work for them, figuring out and asking them also, okay, so what are the risks? I mean, typical things like, okay, what frustrates you? What do you get energized about? What are the things that you value in doing business, in your work? What do you stand for in terms of, okay, things that you go the extra mile for or not? I mean, things that these people talk about, and make them proud about their own work. And on the organizational side, you can ask similar type of questions. But you can also do, that's where these days the AI tools are really, really good at, is to feed, for example, I use Perplexity a lot for my research, but the ChatGPT has also got a very good research engine. I feed it, let's say, URLs of my customers' favorite or not, customers where they say, they've become really big fans. And what I ask the AI is to, just look at every aspect of these organizations and see what patterns you find. And it comes back with things you can't see from the outside. Like things that these organizations, for example, have a heritage of 25, 50 years, which says a lot about what these companies are all about. They're about long-term, they're about quality, so there's a lot to learn from the websites in terms of what people talk about in their press releases, read between the lines, see what they talk about in their about. If they are larger, what they talk about in the annual reports and read between the lines. There's a lot to learn from it. Also, when you do customer interviews, record them with tools like Fathom or other tools that you have available. Feed the transcript, anonymized, of course, to an AI and just ask, what is this person really all about? When I, for example, do research about my podcast guest, I say, okay, I'm going to speak to this and this person. It's the CEO of that company. Give me a profile. What does this person likes, dislikes? What are they about? What do they stand for? And it's amazing these days what already you get as a profile to understand sort of the deeper, the angle around that person. And once you do that with a number of customers, you start to see patterns. And that is very often, forgotten. It's very important to look at that because these people stand for something. These organizations want to go somewhere. And if you can amplify that with your solution, so go a little bit out of the domain that you're talking about, or we sell finance systems, for example, how does our product amplify what they want to do anyway? That's where a lot of your gold insights come from. Another angle that always try to look into, and it works for some, and it doesn't work for all, is what are the edges that your ideal customers live in? So it's about context of their business. And I found with at least 7 out of 10 projects that I do on the repositioning side, that there are always 1 or 2 axes that you can find that their ideal customers, their fans, that's a reality for them. All of these type of things you often also don't find in the typical firmographics and demographic things. So again, get that straight before you internationalize. It's going to make your internationalization route so much more accurate, effective.
Yeah, it's going to make you so much more focused on what you're going to go
Exactly.
for. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's true.
And given the changing economic climate, how do you think, how this has affected international SaaS expansion strategies?
Yeah, there's so many things going on. And of course, that's always the case. When I'm doing my projects, particularly the value proposition type projects, I'm always looking at 3 different angles that create urgency, because that's what it's really all about in the sales-led SaaS space, of course. So what I look at is what's going on outside of the control of the ideal customers that my customer has. Because they have a business, and within that constraint of the business, they control certain things because it's their people, it's their product, it's the way they go about it, it's their money, and so on. There's other things that they don't control, which is what's happening outside their four walls, which can be regulatory, it can be economic viability, it can be changing customer requirements and needs and expectations. It can be other competitors. It can be competitors entering the market. So there's a whole range of things that happen. It can be, for example, the price of raw material, the access to talent, like all the things that you don't control, but you have to deal with it. So you can ignore that, or you can embrace it and see how you can position within that. And that is something that is the changing economic climate. You mentioned one of many changes, but the changing economic climate is just like a domino effect on a whole range of other things, because the changing economic climate makes companies stand back, maybe hire less, maybe fire a couple of people, do more with less, so their expectations are changing. They start looking at technology with new eyes. Maybe it's more that they take the technology that is maybe they're making the cost savings. Some of them are more bold and say, okay, well, this is the opportunity to start working on the upside, because if we don't do it now, etc. So look at this, what it means to your customers, but by all means, what how the economic climate has affected internationalization strategies is that it doesn't hurt to niche further down, because 90% of the cases, what worked in a market where everything was fine and everybody had budget and everybody could do the things, there wasn't a punishing for it. It doesn't hurt to articulate even clearer what is the problem that you solve that keeps your ideal customers up at night, or that's now keeping your ideal customers up at night, because it's changing. And then see, out of all the things that you've highlighted, okay, you might solve 5 different problems that are both super valuable to solve now and both super critical to solve right now, because these are 2 different angles. And look for those problems, which one you solve like no one else. Because that is what I call, it's a triangle. I'm talking about it on page 24 in my book. Problems are there to be solved. But a problem that is highly valuable to solve but not critical is a nice to have. And in times of crisis, people don't do nice to haves. So if you want to stay in business, keep in the zone of highly valuable and highly critical. If it's critical but not valuable, then also do nothing. So it needs to be, if you start rating those problems on a scale of 1 to 10, everything that's above 8, keep it. But then it's the most important if you have 5 of those that you not only solve it, but solve it better than their alternatives. That can be indeed a spreadsheet, it can be doing it in-house, it can be a competitor, but it needs to be better than the alternative. If you solve it, it's not enough, it's a 5, because everybody else does that as well. But your positioning power, your pricing power, your momentum in the market that is not going to stop but actually accelerate is in the triangle of high on these criteria. That's what I would look at. And once you've got that, first of all, you got something that's highly defensible. That is pretty important in the market, and especially in a market whereby the economy is down. And you can hit a nerve. And hitting a nerve in a market where everybody is screaming and saying, we have the best solution for you, buy, hitting a nerve is even more important. Stand out. So that's my recommendation there.
And do you have any recommendations specifically about when we're talking about sales-led growth, and how can you maybe shorten the sales cycle? Because I've been hearing more and more that sales cycles are getting longer and longer. Do you have any specific, or obviously general advice, it cannot be specific, general advice around this, apart from, as you said, like nailing down, let's say, the basics, the fundamental elements and the positioning? Is there anything else that can be done maybe within the sales cycle to shorten it?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I already mentioned the most important ones. Like the value is clear. Without it, it's super hard. It's gamble. And a lot of companies optimize, well, they have a win rate of 20%, and they actually think it's good. But if you turn it around, you're losing 80%. So it's not good at all. I have seen, even in my own organization where I used to work for, that in one country where we were actually the market leader, we had the typical win rate of 20%. In a country where we started, because it was sort of a greenfield, introducing a new market that hadn't been there before, and we said that's not enough. So we ended up with 80% win rates. whereby we sold the product in a completely different way, with a completely different story, around the approach that made us unique. And we had competitors like SAP and Oracle qualifying out the moment they realized we were in. Companies in that country where we didn't have a lot of references, which is of course also when you go international, they better than us. They were prepared to pay a premium. So all of these things work, even within your own organization. So that's one, get the foundation right. Obviously look at the right metrics. But I'm referring to a blog that I wrote about this, or an essay around 10 tactics that work really well. One of them is sell the idea, not the product. And this is about something that a lot of companies forget, because they think, okay, this is what we sell. It's product in this category and it has these unique features. So it's feature selling. It's what you have. They forget about why customers should care. It's also not important why you build it, because no one cares. Why should they care? And they care about a desired outcome, because they're here right now. They want to be there and something is holding them behind. So sell that idea. And a recommendation to read a book is the book called Resonate from Nancy Duarte, who's the CEO of a company called Duarte, which is one of the most famous companies where it comes to, for example, PowerPoint design or pitch deck design or deck design in general. She wrote this book to Resonate. And in that book, she did this analysis of famous pitches, speeches, and so on, movies, and started to figure out, okay, when do people listen? And when do they start to sit up and pay attention and start to clap and start to awe and these type of things? And what she figured out is, if you go from what is, the situation that people have today, to what can be, that's where that happens. So analyzing, for example, Steve Jobs with the iPhone or with the iPad that was coming out of the sleeve of the envelope, that's where he took from what is. Everybody knew this was the norm, and he took it to a completely different level in a very simple way. And Martin Luther King, I have a dream. He was also doing exactly from what is to what can be. So it's applicable to any situation. In sales, it's fantastic. It's a fantastic framework. If you take people from what is today to what can be, and the bigger you make that gap, more you drag them in. And if you do that strategically, and you figure out in your discovery what keeps these people up at night, the problems that they have that are highly valuable and highly critical, that you can solve like no one else, that is, if you have one or two or three, stack them behind in the right order so that you build towards the high, whereby the first one is already like, wow. Second one is, wow. The third one is, okay, stop it. It's us. Where can we sign? That is one thing. People forget that. It's actually trait number 9 in my book. Another thing is that I see that people have to work on is sales confidence. And people think they have sales that understand the product. They can be confident, but they can be confident in the wrong way. I've written recently a framework to get people from confidence level 0 to confidence level 4. People that are on the 0 level, they understand the product really well. They can demo it. They can answer any question. It's not enough. If they don't understand what makes you different, they cannot play with that difference. It remains a gamble story. It's about their enthusiasm to explain features. That confidence needs to be in understanding inside out what makes you different and how this applies and where this applies. What context does it apply and come to life? And that's what they search for. Once they understand that, they're asking different questions. They start to what I call collect dots. And once they collected a couple of dots, they can then start to say, hey, if I step back, you say you have this problem and this problem, and I ask you about this and this, and you answer that, what I see is that your problem is not this, but your problem is actually that. And you start showing people that are actually on the danger or on the risk of making an investment that's going to solve a problem that is going to return in 7 months' time or in 1 year time. The moment you can take them out of that and say, hey, this is what I see, and that's exactly why we build our solution, because that's what we see all the time. That is gold. But it's all about building confidence. And it starts with building confidence around differentiation. So that's an angle. Let me see what else in that. Yeah, I mean, all of these things lead to building trust. Another thing that people don't use enough, leverage your fans. The problem at the end is the moment your foundation is not strong enough and you still get customers in that don't turn into fans, your number of references will remain at 5 or 10 that you always ask. These people get crazy. The moment you do your foundation right, and you understand what are the characteristics of those people that become our fans the easiest way, then what it turns out, and that is also what happened, for example, in Belgium and the Netherlands, introducing that product that was the market leader in Norway and Sweden. In Norway and Sweden, they were always struggling with references because they had the market and they sold it to anybody. In the Netherlands, we approached this internationalization approach whereby we were really focused. 95% was reference. We could just show the list to customers and the prospects and say, hey, pick one, call them. So again, it comes back to getting the foundation right. And that is going to accelerate. It's going to give you all kinds of things that come from almost out of the box that are making deals go faster. And I can go with many more things.
Another thing, I was actually curious to hear your opinion about like what global SaaS trends do you see emerging that leaders should prepare for in the next 3 to 5 years? That's what I'm really interested to hear your take on this.
Two that are really important, and they happen all the time. It's, first of all, the noise is increasing. I mean, just see what people these days are doing with cranking out content with AI. And some of them are just, almost on an automation mode, just throwing it out and see what works. And problem at the end is in the marketplace, all this at scale messaging, whether this is on LinkedIn or via cold email. I mean, how many cold emails do you get these days? And you can almost recognize them by looking at the first line. They always start the same, and it's okay. Select all, delete. That is a problem that not only you have, it's what your prospects have as well, and they get numb for it. The trend is, how do you then stand out in the marketplace? So that's getting above the noise. And that's maybe chapter number 10 in my book, Surprise and Hit the Right Nerve. But again, it always starts when you do the other things first. The other thing is, and that is also with AI, of course, taking a far bigger role these days, that the half-life of your product is shrinking and shrinking. I mean, I come from the world back in the 90s, whereby we had a release cycle of 2 years. These days, it's 2 days, 2 weeks. Sprints, fast turnaround. Of course, with the clouds, I mean, you're constantly in a release cycle. But I mean, look at what's happening these days with what you can do with AI to start building prototypes, minimum viable products, and just accelerate this whole cycle. So it's about ideas, validating the ideas, see what you're going to build and so on, and then these things come to market. So what normally took 2 years now takes 2 months, meaning also that if you don't have a moat, a deeply differentiated power, your competitor will catch up the moment they hear about it. It's like 3-4 sprints, a couple of resources to it, and then they check the box as well. So maintain your moat, keep investing in that. Wrote a long essay around that, the principles of differentiation. And that's doesn't only have to be in products. There's many more things to think about. But keep investing in that. Product strategy wise, keep challenging your product strategy. What is the percentage? It's strengthening your differentiated power. Also have the guts to kill profitable products, because it's going to free up resources that you need, and have the guts to say, yes, it worked until now, it is stalling, and we need to make that other gap. But a lot of companies are in that mode of, okay, it still works, it's still very profitable, and we have to keep growing. So go. And in the meantime, others catch up with the tools and the knowledge available on the market. So 2 trends, more noise, so you have to stand out in a different way, and the product half-life cycle is shrinking. And that can become a very negative flywheel, but can also become your positive flywheel.
I think that's a really good note to close on. That's really good trends to keep an eye on. And I mean, AI, everything is going so fast, like much faster than before. And I see even the constantly new products coming out. So, and every time that OpenAI or Anthropic add a new feature to the platform, a lot of products die in that moment. So that's a constantly quick catching up game. But before
I challenged my CEO mastermind at some point. Okay, what would happen if OpenAI would introduce a product today that's going to compete in your space? Think about that. A lot of people just got white.
I think that's one of the things that keep people at night, or from that moment on will keep people up at night.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it is something to take into consideration, because there's still a lot of rappers that are dying. overnight because there's just a new feature added to the ChatGPT platform that a lot of people are familiar with. But yeah, if there's much more than just one single feature behind a company, I'm sure they're going to be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's also true. A lot of people mistake minimum viable product for it needs to do the minimum bare thing. I'd rather call minimum viable product minimum remarkable product, because it is about solving something in a way that gets people to want to use it, even though it's not complete yet. That's a far better way to start than minimum viable, which is bare minimum and it does nothing to you. So that's another thing.
Yeah, and that's
happening a lot at the moment with all the AI adoption.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of noise. So there's a lot of like prototypes coming out now. So it's even more difficult to stand out when you're coming out with an MVP now. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
So where can listeners learn more about your remarkable effect framework and what you do in general if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, well, and LinkedIn is possibly the best way to get in touch with me. I don't think there's another Ton Dobbe on LinkedIn, but I'm the one with the sun behind his name. The other thing is you can download my book. I made it available for free. It's on theremarkableeffect.com. Type that in, and then you end up on my website on the right page.
Yeah, we will link that in the show notes, so to make sure that people have the right address. So thank you so much it was a really great conversation, and have a lovely rest of the day.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. The Multilingual Content Podcast is powered by Undertow. We help B2B SaaS companies grow in any language. Get in touch if you want to know more. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new episode. If you want to support us, remember to give 5 stars to the podcast. See you next time.